London is a very expensive city. I'm not saying anything surprising when I say that, but we're going to talk in this episode of the English Right Now podcast about how to do London for a little bit less money. And of course, it's a real conversation between us. Here's Rob. Hello, Rob. Welcome.
Hi, Roy. Nice to be here.
And it's lovely to have you. Of course, this is a real life conversation. It's not scripted. We're going to talk about this, and it's a great way for people to learn English naturally rather than in a kind of more, uh, a natural way to learn English. So,
Yeah,
London,
yeah.
you've lived in London for a long time.
I don't live in London now, but yes, I spent a long time living in London before I moved to the countryside to get out of London. But it is nice that London's on my doorstep, and it's a great city to go and visit. And I understand that it's one of the top cities in the world to go and visit, for a holiday as a tourist.
Yeah, I lived there for maybe 10 years, I think,
Yeah.
and I loved it. But then one day I woke up and I remember thinking, I'm tired. And they say if you're tired of London, you're tired of life. I don't think it was that. It was just such a busy, busy
Mm,
city, very
mm.
intense. But it is absolutely wonderful for a visit.
Yeah.
That's one thing I love about London. I think London is one of my favorite cities in the world, and I
Mm.
still love to go there. But
Yeah.
it is really expensive.
It has. It's got more expensive, I think, over the years. The cost of everything, well, everywhere, I suppose, but in London in particular, I can see the cost going up. And when I visit other cities, I realise how expensive London is. You
Yeah,
could call it a rip-off sometimes, some of the prices they charge. A rip-off.
yeah. Rip off is when something is beyond the acceptable level of expensive. It is absolutely disgusting. I think it is at times. I
Mm,
think it is. I think it costs an arm and a leg, which is a great little idiom to mean very
mm.
expensive. But there are ways to make things cheaper, and I'm thinking about it now. For example, here's a classic one that I always used to find really funny. There's a place called Covent Garden in the middle of London. There's a lot of street performers there. It's a really beautiful kind of place, and you can buy bottles of water in Covent Garden, and they're really expensive. They're really expensive. But just round the corner, there is a small supermarket. I think it's a Tesco, and you can buy water for a fraction of the price. So if you're really thirsty, 2 minutes walk, and you will save yourself a fortune. But all these tourists kind of stay in this area. It's like a kind of trap, a tourist trap,
It's trap.
um, which is a great little thing to say. And they'll buy the water there, not thinking that it could be cheaper 2 minutes away.
Yeah.
Have
Well,
you?
the other thing you can do, Roy, with water. I mean, obviously, take an empty bottle, and I think you're allowed in many pubs now to go in and ask them to fill your water bottle for no charge at all,
Yeah.
or cafes as well. Sometimes they display a little sign in the window to say "water, free water." You can go
Yeah.
in and get your bottles filled up as well, and then it's free.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely lovely. Yeah, absolutely. So that's our first little tip. But we're not just talking about water, and that's a basic, that's a thing that we need. We're going to talk about the things that you can enjoy in London for free and for a fraction of the normal price. So, what would you advise? Say somebody's coming to England to London for the first time. They want to do London on a budget. What's the
Mm.
first thing you would say?
Well, I think getting around. Let's start with transport.
Yeah.
We have got a fantastic transport system in London. First thing, if you're flying into Heathrow Airport, the cheapest way is to get what we call the tube, the
Yep.
nickname for the underground train. That's much cheaper to get into London than going on something called the Heathrow Express, which costs lots of money. Only takes you to Paddington on the outskirts of London. Then you still have to transfer to a tube or a taxi to get into the centre of London. So
Yeah.
the tube is the cheapest way to get around. And also the buses.
Yeah.
Don't get a bus from the airport because that's a long way out. But when you're in the centre of London, yeah, get those red double-decker buses, the iconic red double-decker buses. I think it's £1.70 per journey. And lots of routes, but one route, number 12, I believe, goes
Yeah.
right to the centre of London, sit upstairs on the bus, and then you get to see all the sights, more or less for £1.70, rather than going on one of those kind of tourist buses.
Yeah. Of course, on the tourist buses, you get people sort of saying this is
Yeah.
this and this is this, but realistically, if you've got a phone, then you can follow the route as well. And you said one thing. You said that Paddington is on the edge of London, but I would say it's probably on the edge of central London rather than
Yeah.
London because London's huge.
Yeah.
You don't want to go to the edge of London because that is a long, long way away from anything that's kind of famous or any kind of iconic building. Paddington, it is still a bit of a. You still would need to get public transport to get into the centre from Paddington. Yeah, you could walk it. There are
Mm.
there are some nice like canals around there, and you can find statues of Paddington Bear, which is also free. But realistically, if you want to see the kind of big tourist, the big sites, you're going to need the tube again to get into central London. Did you
Yeah,
know
you
as
need to
well,
be
by the way?
right.
Apparently,
So you
sorry.
need to be, yes, you need to be right in the center of London really to see those the most famous buildings, don't we? And I
Yeah,
was going to say London's obviously split into two bits. You've got the West End, which is kind of theatre land and slightly newer part of London, isn't it? You've got the City of London, the financial district. So two very separate parts, aren't there, to
yeah.
London?
Well, a lot of these things that we talk about being in London, London isn't actually. It's more of a kind of encompassing term. So within London, there are two cities. There is the City of London and the City of Westminster.
Mm.
And the City of London is a very small area, actually. It's just the financial district. This is a topic for another lesson, to be honest. But a lot of what we talk about being London is actually in the City of Westminster. It is kind of all called London as a kind of sort of more encompassing term. But yeah, I definitely think, and a lot of things that you can do for free. I mean, first of all, the sites. You can see the Houses of Parliament. You can see Trafalgar Square with Nelson's Column. You can see what most people refer to as Big Ben. And then you can go to some of the local museums. We can talk about museums in a moment. But they're all very much contained in a small area. So you can actually walk it if you know where you're
Mm.
going.
Yeah,
What would be
yeah.
your.
I'd say plan your route. Yeah, you could do the Houses of Parliament. You could walk across the bridge, go along the south bank, the south side of the
Yeah,
river, and you'll get a nice view from the river. You'll go past the London Eye, the big revolving wheel that's on the south bank. You can then cut back across the river. You can go to Covent Garden, Trafalgar Square, and then you can go walk down to Buckingham Palace through the park.
yeah,
So it's a nice little circuit you could do there, just for
yeah.
example.
And if you want to go a bit further, you can see the iconic Tower Bridge. You can also see St. Paul's
Mm,
Cathedral, which is I believe that's in the City of London.
yeah, and Tower
And
of London as well. The Tower of London.
of course, yeah. And you can see all these. If you want to go in the Tower of London, then you have to pay. But you can see
Mm,
it from the outside, and it's a magnificent building. You can see the Beefeaters, which is kind of the name for the royal for a guard who's dressed in red and a black hat. They're very sort of famous uh, guardians of the Tower of London. You can see those from outside. You can see a lot of these iconic buildings. I mean, you know, you can see what we call Big Ben. It's actually technically called the Elizabeth Tower, but you can see Big Ben. You
mm,
can walk across Tower Bridge. So
yeah.
instantly, you've got a lot of these iconic sites without spending any money. And there's some kind of hidden gems as well. Quite often, you find in the middle of London, which you're not sure is going to be there. Like Covent Garden is somewhere that's just slightly. It's so close as well, but you can quite easily miss it if you just walk along the Strand, for
Mm,
example.
yeah.
Um, Things like that. So yeah, we talked about walking around London. It's a relatively decent walk, and it's not overly far to walk. What else would you sort of say
Well,
that's good on a budget?
well, definitely the museums. We have so many museums in London, and the big ones are actually free,
Yeah.
incredibly. The Science Museum, there's the Natural History Museum, and the Victoria and Albert Museum. They're all very close together in an area called Kensington.
Yep.
Big museums, completely free of charge. They do have some extra exhibits inside you may pay extra for, but the
Yep.
main museums. And then back to Trafalgar Square, you've got the National Portrait Gallery. Again, that's massive and it's free. And if you do like your art, we've got two big free galleries. There's the Tate Modern
Yep.
down on by the river on the South Bank, modern art, and Tate Britain, which has more traditional British art
Yeah.
a bit further along towards Victoria. All
And
free, so great.
and in Trafalgar Square, I think you've got two museums, haven't you? Because you've got the National Art Gallery and the National Portrait Gallery. There's
Yeah,
two. I
yeah,
used to
you're
go in
right.
the
Yeah.
National Art Gallery for lunch. I used to have a meal deal. We'll talk about a meal deal in a moment. This seems to be my iconic phrase now. Have a meal deal. So I used to have a meal deal in there over lunch while I was working, not far away.
Mm,
And of course, just above that, we've even forgotten there's Leicester Square. Leicester Square, which is
mm,
where For one, the Lego store is, but there's also the famous cinemas where
Yes, that's
the
our
the
cinema.
stars
That's
will
our
have the
yeah.
premieres.
That's our cinema district, isn't it? Where the big
Yeah,
screens are. And yeah, you're right. This is where they have the premieres and the red carpet events and stuff like that. Again, the cinemas, they're not free. They are expensive, but there are always promotions on,
yeah,
sometimes 2 for 1. If you sign up for certain websites and things like that. Otherwise, yeah, cinema in Leicester Square can be very expensive if you just
yeah.
pay on the day.
Just a bit further up is Soho,
Hmm.
and then there's Chinatown or the Chinese district, and then you've got Oxford Street, which is where you can go shopping if you do find money.
Yes,
Of course, that's not the topic of this lesson because we're not the topic
you're
of
trying
this
to save
podcast.
money.
We're avoiding, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But if you want to if you suddenly look in your pocket and you're like, I didn't realize I had £1,000, I'll go and buy some things. That's there. But I think this is wonderful. The museums are free. I
Mm,
love that.
mm.
You would have to get a tube down to
Yeah,
South
or a
Kensington,
bus,
which
or
is
a bus.
bus, yeah. But it's not far. Again, you could walk at a push, and then there's
Mm,
also Harrods in that area, which is a very famous department, like a very famous shop,
yeah.
um, and things like that. And I think as well, if you do catch the tube or the DLR, as there's also another line, you can also go to places like Greenwich, and
Yes.
in Greenwich is stunning. And there's another way to get to Greenwich, isn't there?
Ah, yes, because I'm a big fan of the river. We have the River Thames running through the centre of London. There's lots of tourist boats where you can go on a little tourist trip and you have a commentary. But I always recommend going on the Thames Clipper, which is
Yeah,
our ferry service. It's a high-speed ferry service that goes back and forwards, up and down the river, all the way from Putney in the west to Greenwich and Woolwich in the east. And Greenwich is a great place to. Oh, by the way, it goes past the Tower of London. It goes under Tower Bridge, and then it
yep,
goes down the river past Canary Wharf, which is a modern kind of skyscraper, and onto Greenwich. And I love Greenwich as you do, Roy.
yeah,
It's a bit of break from the hustle of the main city, isn't it? You get out of the city.
yeah.
It's got a market, museums. What else has it got?
It's got a huge park.
Mm,
It's got a huge park where you can actually see Canary Wharf, which is another financial district of London, and you can see parts of London as well. It's the higher you go up the hill, the further you go up the hill, the more you're going to see. It's a fantastic view of London, and at the top there's the observatory. Now, I believe you have to pay to go in the observatory. You can see it from the outside, but it's a beautiful, stunning park that you can see
mm,
London. At the bottom of the hill, there are the maritime museums, where you can learn more about Greenwich's kind of history or London's history with maritime. There's a lot of kind of iconic um, reference points to British maritime history, and then, as you say, there is the market, which where you can get some food. Of course, that's something you pay for,
yeah.
and you can also see the Cutty Sark. This is another thing you have to pay for,
Mm.
but you can see it from the outside. It's a magnificent ship. It's a clipper, I believe they call it a
Yeah,
clipper.
a
Uh,
tea clipper. It's an old
cli-
wooden sailing ship that used to sail around the world carrying tea, didn't it? Tea
how
clipper.
British, how iconically British that we've got a ship that used to deliver tea. So yeah,
You
I,
can't miss it.
I
You can't miss it though, can you? If you go to Greenwich, you get off
no,
the ferry. It's there in a dock on the waterfront.
yeah,
It's incredible. I want to say the National Maritime Museum you mentioned, that's free, so that's
yep,
good to go in. It's free, and when you're on top of the hill, near the observatory, you can actually for free step on the Greenwich Meridian line. The line that goes right
yes.
around the world. You can put your foot on one side and be in the eastern hemisphere, and one foot and be in the western hemisphere. Is that right?
It's
Yes.
fantastic, isn't
Yeah.
it? The time zones, you definitely change time zones as you walk over on something. It's a fantastic kind of a thing to have there. I absolutely love Greenwich, and it is a break from central London. I actually used to walk down the River Thames to Greenwich, so I would walk from central London to Greenwich. It
Mm.
took me about an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes, and it's a magnificently long walk, but it is a beautiful walk where you can see a lot of famous things as well.
I was going to say,
Beautiful.
yeah, walking is one way. Of course, we have a cycle hire system as well in London now, where
Yes,
you
you
can
do.
hire these bikes, red bikes, because I think they're sponsored by Santander, the bank.
Yeah,
And it's really cheap. They've got this deal now where you can hire for £3.50 for a day. You can hire as many bikes as you want. You can only have them for up to 1 hour per hire. So once an hour is finished, you put them back in the docking station and then take another
yeah.
bike out. But you can do that all day long for £3.50, and you can cycle all over London.
That's really good, isn't it? It's really
Mm.
amazing. And bring your own helmet, I suppose.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, so you've got there's lots of kind of cool ways to go. I'm gonna say one of those things. There's those little things like are they called rickshaws or tuk tuks, these kind of things, where people say, "Don't do those. Don't get on those. They are a rip off." I've heard many horror stories where it's basically a person who cycles you round and you get in the back. It's like a kind of a person cycling. I've heard they're really expensive, and you've got to be very careful
Yes,
with
yes.
those. That's yeah. I mean, that's
I've
the
heard
downside.
I've heard stories where you ask the guy how much is it, and he says £10 or something, and it's turns out it's £10 per minute or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
So by the time you get off, you're owing hundreds of pounds. So yeah, avoid them. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely avoid those, and I'd also be cautious of some street performers in the sense of like people doing kind of where you have to gamble on things. I'd be
Mm,
wary of those and people trying to sell you things in the street as well.
mm,
That's one thing, but we're not talking about the negative. We're talking about the positive. We're going for the good things about London and saving money. So we've talked about museums being free. We've talked about the fact you can see a lot of these buildings or things like the Cutty Sark from outside. Parks as well.
mm.
We've mentioned parks, but there are a lot of stunning, huge green spaces in London. A lot of people think that London would be a kind of very sort of a lot of buildings, not many,
Yeah,
but there's a lot of trees and a lot of green areas. Greenwich Park is a great example. But even
yeah.
in central London, what's your favourite park? It's
Well,
very
I do like St James's Park, which is
yeah,
just by Buckingham Palace. It's got a big lake in the middle, and obviously you can go and visit Buckingham Palace while you're there. And I think they've got pelicans, haven't they? Pelicans wandering
yeah,
around the park. They live in the lake, but it's a great place. There's some cafes as well if you want to buy food. If you have your own food, we'll come on to that in a minute, Roy.
yep,
Bring your own food or a picnic. You can sit in the park, escape the kind of noise and crowds of the rest of London, but yet you are only literally minutes away from all that hustle and bustle and all the sights and stuff like
yeah.
that. So, what would you take to the park to eat, Roy?
God, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? I take a meal deal. So there are certain ways that of saving money. Of course, restaurants can be very expensive, but a lot of supermarkets they do these promotions where you can get a sandwich or a pasta or something like this, a snack which could be some fruit or some even a chocolate croissant, maybe a croissant, maybe there, or, something or a chocolate bar, and then you can also get a drink as well, which could be a coffee or something like that, and you can take that, and it tends to be cheaper than maybe buying things individually. It's sort of like a sales promotion
Mm,
with you could make it at home. To be honest, I should
mm,
probably say that, but it's that's another way around it. If you're desperate for something on the go, you see a supermarket like Sainsbury's, Tesco, one of these kind of places. You can Boots, even Boots the chemist. You can pop in there, grab your meal deal, and then head to the park.
mm,
Um, I would say with a lot of these things, a couple of top tips for saving money. First of all, get yourself an Oyster card. We've talked about public transport, but an Oyster card is a travel card where you can just tap on and tap off as you go. You can also use your credit card as well, but I think an Oyster
mm.
card is probably slightly more convenient, in my opinion. Maybe you've got better experience of using your credit card. I don't know,
No,
but
no,
I
I
would
would
get
say
that.
you can go contactless using your bank card, but of course, if you're visiting the UK, you may pay a foreign transaction fee every time you use your
Yeah,
contactless card. So by buying an Oyster card, it's like a prepay card. You put some
yeah,
money on the card, and then yeah, what I would say is never pay cash for your tube or bus fares
yeah.
because the price is double then, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, Oyster is a good idea. Get a loyalty card from these supermarkets that can reduce the price of those sort of meal deals and things like this. And overall, those are a really good thing that I think you can do. Uh,
Mm.
so we
I was
talked
going to
about
say
parks. We talked, yeah,
Yeah, I was going to say the thing about eating. Eating out is very expensive in London. There's no
yeah,
doubt about it. There are some cheaper chains, places like Pizza Express and Pizza Hut, slightly cheaper.
yeah,
Again, check out deals before you go. Maybe get an app and you might get a 2 for 1 deal. Do check out the deals before you
yeah.
walk into a restaurant because eating out is expensive, as I found
So
out.
so far our top tips, and I think we've got one more thing we can really talk about. There's a lot of things you can see in London for free. You can go to museums for free. It's cheaper to catch and use your Oyster card to catch the bus rather than a tour bus. Avoid those sort of taxis on a bike thing. You can use the Thames Clipper instead of a sightseeing boat. You can go to the parks, you can have meal deals, things like that. But there are also some ways that you can get amazing views of London. Now,
Mm.
there is a building in London called the Shard, which is, I think, one of the tallest buildings in Europe. But you have to pay to go to a floor where you can see things. But there's an alternative, isn't there?
Yeah, actually, I've discovered there are two alternatives now.
Oh,
There
what
are
a time to be
two
alive.
fairly new towers in the city of London. So that's to the east side of the centre. One's called the Sky Garden. And so you go up to a very high level, and it is an indoor garden at the top. There's a cafe, of course, if you can afford to buy coffee there. But yeah, you don't need to buy the coffee. You just go for the views. Amazing views over London. And very close by is a new tower that's just opened, and it's called Horizon 22. And again,
Ooh,
that's free. It's even higher. Not as high as the Shard, but high enough to get a beautiful view over London. The only thing is you have to book these in advance. Don't turn up on the day. Go onto the
okay.
website. You book a time slot, and then it's free. Okay, but great views and just as good as the Shard, as long as the weather's clear.
Yeah. Maybe we should get in touch with them and try to do a podcast live from there,
On
me
the
and you.
top.
Both of us on a podcast live. That'd be great, wouldn't it? I'm terrified of heights, so I'm not sure that would be my best. But yeah, but I just close my eyes. But there's lots of ways. I mean, we're never going to lie that London is a cheap city. Um, it is expensive to eat out. It is still expensive to use things like public transport, comparatively with some parts of the world. But there are things that you can do to save money and enjoy for less than you would do if you were just following the beaten path,
Mm.
sort of the traditional tourist routes of going on that sightseeing bus, of going on the London Eye. You ever been on the London Eye?
I have when it first
Have
opened.
you?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I
Did you
mean,
enjoy
it's
it?
it's it's a novelty. It's something to experience, and yes, you get a nice view, but for a cost.
Yeah. And there are a lot of expensive things. I mean, something that's well worth doing is going to taking in a musical in the West End. I
Mm.
think you can get budget tickets in Leicester Square, for example. You can get, I think it's cheap price tickets in.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's a little ticket office in the middle of Leicester Square called I forget what it's called. Anyway, you can't miss it, and it sells off the spare tickets for
yeah,
musicals and theatres. And of course, London, a bit like Broadway in New York, has amazing theatres and so many different shows. So you've got to take in a show, but it can be expensive. So yeah, if you can get a half price ticket from this special
yeah,
ticket office, then do it. Yeah.
absolutely. And yet again, that we're saving money, not spending money. So that's there. But as
Hmm.
well, if you have any suggestions as well, please do let us know in the comments of things that you could do in London on a budget.
Hmm.
This is important. I mean, you could just sit on the tube all day if you really wanted to. Once you're on, you're on.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that was the best experience of London. But maybe if you like hearing the words "mind the gap," that could be great. And generally, just being surrounded by people, then yeah, maybe. But if you do want to learn more about things to do in the UK that are not based in London, check out this episode of the English Right Now podcast, where we talk about our top 10 things to do in the UK. And of course, always let us know of things that you think we could have added to this conversation. But Rob, I just want to say thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.
You sure will. It's been a pleasure. Bye for now.